Hey there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's good to be with you on this Thursday, August 25th, and here's some of what we're talking about tonight. We could soon learn a lot more about the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, or not. It all depends on the document a judge has approved releasing tomorrow. We'll explain. New abortion restrictions took effect today in 3 states, but California will consider protecting abortion access in its constitution. Where do the states stand after the end of Roe v. Wade? Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will expand his country's army. What could this mean for the war in Ukraine? Also, California loves cars but hates their pollution. A new state regulation could make gas guzzlers much harder to come by. How will it work? And what will it mean for your next new car? Plus, computer-generated music is slowly catching on, but a rapper made with AI just lost a real record deal over concerns of racial stereotypes. Are artists like FN Mecca a fluke or the future? The FBI search of Mar-a-Lago involved a lot of highly sensitive paperwork. Today, a judge ordered the release of perhaps the most sensitive one, the affidavit that justified the search. The judge wants a redacted version with key details blacked out, unsealed by noon tomorrow. The Justice Department submitted its version to the court today, and the judge found the redaction sufficient to protect the investigation's sources and methods and grand jury information and witness names. That addresses an understandable concern. The DOJ argued that unsealing this affidavit could significantly damage its investigation. The document led to the recovery of 11 sets of classified documents from Mar-a-Lago. Some were labeled top secret, requiring very specific clearance. NBC Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now to start us off. Julia, let's be clear, we don't know what we're going to see in this redacted affidavit, so perhaps we should begin with a little bit of level setting for people who think that this document might blow the doors off of whatever was going on at Mar-a-Lago. It might, and it might not, right?
That's right, Joshua. I mean, we've been trying to set expectations here at NBC and everywhere as we prepare for what we will imagine to be a release tomorrow morning of this affidavit, but it is redacted. What we do know, though, is that the judge agreed to the redactions that the Justice Department did. The way he set this up last week is he said, look, I have 2 competing interests here, the interest of the public, which is being represented by the media, NBC News being one of those parties. Then I have the interest of the Justice Department that says that unsealing this affidavit will be damaging to the investigation and have national security implications. What I want is for the Justice Department to put forth what they would see as the redactions that they need, and then I will then review it. Now, the judge in this case said that he actually agreed with exactly what the Justice Department put forward in the redaction. So it seems that they played ball to some extent, but we could expect to see reductions of names of people who would be uncharged, definitely probably, here we go, hypothesizing, names of people who would be witnesses in this investigation so that they don't compromise them going forward, because we can imagine they would continue to want to protect them and rely on those people for information. And most importantly, it might very well redact, disguise the very core of this investigation, which is why the FBI would be involved in the first place. We know that the former president did not hand over all of the records he was supposed to the National Archives. We know that he took some documents that were classified, had that top secret designation on them. But the question is there something here that would point to another criminal, another underlying crime? Will we find out exactly why they want that? Could it be related to a nuclear program of some sort? It may be that very question, the question we all want the answer to, could still be redacted in what we see tomorrow. But I think what the judge wants to be able to show is that there was a reason why a former president had a team of FBI agents come to his residence, his resort, his business, and go in and take documents.
I appreciate you, Julia, trying to balance all these different interests, especially because politics is certainly a part of this as well. There's been a lot of hue and cry, particularly from conservatives and Republicans, demanding more transparency about what the Justice Department is doing. And, you know, the judge has to balance an array of different things. I don't think that if the Justice Department just went black, 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 and blacked out every single line, that the judge would necessarily approve of that, because that would just be kind of conceding to the Justice Department entirely, and that could get very sticky. But there was an op-ed this week from Michael Conway, who was a former counsel for the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, where he says that the very existence of redactions can create misunderstandings. What about the potential for further political upheaval or misunderstanding, or for this whole controversy not to go away with the release of the affidavit? They must know that no matter what they release, some people are just not going to be satisfied with it.
That's true. I mean, look, I covered the Mueller investigation. There were redactions there. People wanted to unveil. We just saw an unredacted version of exactly what the Justice Department was discussing when they decided not to charge Trump with obstruction of justice in that investigation. But when things are redacted, everyone draws assumptions. And often, as is the case in this country, we draw assumptions based on our own previously held biases and beliefs. So this could play into the hands of those biases and beliefs. But I think what the Justice Department doesn't want here would be the name of someone, say a witness, someone who provided information, a co-conspirator, anyone who could be targeted with violence, because we already have seen that the upheaval that has been caused by the FBI even going into Mar-a-Lago in the first place led to threats against law enforcement, led to threats against the agents named in the search warrant, led to violent threats against FBI offices in Ohio. These are real concerns, real people's lives at stakes, and a really serious investigation. An investigation that we at least know, without knowing the core of it that I mentioned, at least we know it's serious enough that the Attorney General, after weeks of deliberation, decided, you know what, it's worth the risk, we need to go in. So we at least know it's that serious. But yes, with any redaction, people can draw their own conclusions. It could be that we would very likely see tomorrow supporters of Donald Trump look at those redactions and say, you know what, they're hiding something because they didn't have a reason to go in, whereas we would see people who are critics of Donald Trump saying this affidavit shows us that there was more than enough reason to go in, and the former president is hiding something. Unfortunately, you and I both know people will hold on to those biases and beliefs, but it's important, at least we think, to try to give people as much information as they can about the inner workings of their government and why a search like this is warranted.
Before I let you go, Julia, there is another document I'm thinking of that would even come after this affidavit, and that's a charging document, the criminal complaint. That still has yet to come forward from the Justice Department, and at the end of the day, maybe that's the document that really means the most, whether the Justice Department is actually ready to put its money where its mouth is and say, yes, we are charging people with crimes, regardless of what we thought we were going to find in the affidavit. Here's what we now know that we can charge on with a criminal complaint. So even with this paperwork, there's still, I think, another document that's even more important.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have that. We don't know that that necessarily exists yet. I mean, we're all talking about the reason why they had the search in the first place. But with the search, what was found was, did the search actually confirm the suspicions? That's the way things usually work. There's just so much emphasis put on the warrant and the affidavit in the first place because there's this big question that has been raised by the former president that it was completely unjustified. That is why we're also interested in the reasons for that search. But in the typical process, what we would be interested in would be the charging document to say that in that search, something was found that they believe that they could then press charges and get a reasonable jury, grand jury or otherwise, to find the former president or someone in his orbit guilty of. And so that is what we would then want to see. We're not even close to that. So there's so many unanswered questions, and we really just need to be careful before putting too much stock into what we might learn tomorrow.
Thank you, Julia. That's NBC Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley starting us off tonight. And of course, we'll have the latest on that document when it becomes available. We're expecting it to be released by noon tomorrow. So stay with NBC News Now or NBCnews.com, the NBC News app. And once we know, we'll let you know. More states are restricting abortion access after the end of Roe v. Wade. Today, trigger laws banning abortion took effect in Tennessee, Texas, and Idaho. Now, practically all abortions are banned in Idaho and Tennessee. However, yesterday, a judge blocked the part of Idaho's law that bans abortions in medical emergencies. This month, the Justice Department sued, arguing that Idaho's ban violated federal law. It was the Biden administration's first reproductive rights lawsuit since the ruling on Roe. As for Texas, it already bans most abortions. A new provision makes performing an abortion a felony, punishable by up to life in prison. And also in North Dakota, a statewide trigger ban was expected to go into effect tomorrow, but we just learned that a state court has blocked it from taking effect. Joining us now is MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Cynthia Oxney. I wonder what your sense is of the impact of these trigger laws in terms of the parts that are going into effect and the pieces of them, particularly in Idaho, that have been blocked for now. Hey there, Cynthia. Hey there, Cynthia. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Could you just check to see if you're muted? While you're checking that, I will just reiterate the question so that just to make sure we can both hear each other. I'm wondering what you see as the effect of some of these trigger laws, the ones that have already taken effect, as well as the pieces of them, like the part in Idaho that the Justice Department is challenging. How you see the net effect of these trigger laws as they stand right now.
The net effect is that 20 million women don't have access to an abortion, which is part of control of their own bodies. And when all the trigger laws go into effect, almost 1/3 of women in this country of childbearing age will not have control of their bodies, most notably in the South and in the Plains states. And while, the Department of Justice has done a very good thing here to go in and try to block this portion of the Idaho law, it's a sliver of the cases. And they're going to have to do it, and I applaud that they do it. But it really is only those cases where the woman's life is in danger, but not in cases of rape and incest. It's only if she goes into a hospital, her life is in danger, but she's not going to die. But in order to be stabilized, she needs an abortion. So if, for instance, she might be getting sepsis, if, for instance, she might have to lose her uterus, that's the tiny sliver that this particular lawsuit has to deal with. And for now, we don't have a federal attack to try to reestablish the women's right to abortion through the Department of Justice.
With regard to that, though, I mean, the Justice Department, what you just described, this law, this Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, if that's a federal law, what's the strategy behind just going after Idaho? Wouldn't it apply to all 50 states?
Yes, it should apply to all 50 states. And in Texas, there's been a ruling that's opposite what's happened in Idaho. So eventually this is going to work its way up in different states and go up to the Supreme Court, which, as you know, is very hostile to women's rights. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have to win these battles in state courts. I mean, there's nothing but bad news for women, really. All of these abortion statutes are making it more and more felonious to have an abortion. So far, they aren't actually prosecuting the women. They're going after the doctors, but it's only a matter of time until they go after the women. It's only a matter of time until they go after women traveling to get an abortion. It's only a matter of time till they go after women who are getting these RU486 pills in the mail to have an abortion. So there's nothing but restriction here unless we fight back and win at the ballot box.
Do we have a sense in terms of the laws that have come up so far and the cases that have come up so far, what the landscape is looking like nationwide in terms of abortion rights? I know that's kind of a screwy question to ask, right? Because Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood v. Casey were struck down in the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling earlier this year. But just taken on the whole in terms of how all these things are shaking out, and also that there are some places that are trying to codify abortion rights. California has an impending ballot measure coming up that would write abortion rights into the state's constitution. And there's some polling out of, I believe it's UC Berkeley, that shows that it has very strong support among many Californians. How do we see this landscape shaping out right now with all of these states kind of trying to do their own thing?
Well, the landscape is that Southern women and Plain state women are not going to have a right to control their own body. And that on the coasts, New York, California, Massachusetts, women will have that right. The question is, why is it fair for what's going to happen is rich women in the South and in the Plains will go to California, New York, or Massachusetts if they need an abortion. But poor women will not be able to. So we've created two classes of citizens in the United States, two classes of women, women who have control over their bodies and women who don't. And it's not right. And yet it's going to get more and more and more restrictive unless we begin to win in these races and can change the laws. And it's not only going to be that you're not going to be able to get an abortion because your abortion right is restricted because your doctor's afraid to give you an abortion because of the laws. It'll actually be a felony for you to have an abortion in these states. It's becoming more restrictive. There is the evangelical and the religious right movement is emboldened. You know, I hearken back to that early interview that Chris Matthews did of Trump. And when Trump said the quiet part out loud, which was, oh yeah, I think we're going to have to prosecute women. Do you remember that interview? And then of course he had to take it back because it was so controversial. But that's really where the anti-abortion movement is going. They want to prosecute women and charge them with felonies and put them in jail. That's what we're fighting. So if you are a woman or you're somebody who cares about a woman's right to control her own body, you must vote in the midterms. It's just that simple. We have to win the argument. We have to win races in these Plain states and in these Southern states and get control in the legislatures and protect our rights state by state.
Well, people are definitely showing up to the polls, and we know that at least some voters are very much energized to vote in the midterms because of issues related to abortion rights. MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Cynthia Oxney, always good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still to come, we'll have the latest from Ukraine. Russian forces attacked another train station. We'll have more on the recovery efforts. And Europe's largest nuclear power plant remains in trouble. What's President Zelensky saying about his nation's power grid? We're glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. Things are getting even more dangerous in Ukraine, specifically at its largest nuclear power plant. Today, the Zaporizhzhia plant was briefly disconnected from the power grid. Ukraine's energy agency blames that on nearby Russian attacks. The United Nations nuclear watchdog group says this highlights the seriousness of the power plant's condition. Meanwhile, today, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a significant increase in the size of his country's military. NBC's Josh Letterman has more on all these developments. Hey, Josh.
Joshua, President Zelensky sounding the alarm tonight after the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was disconnected from Ukraine's electricity grid for the first time in history. Typically, there are 4 electric transmission lines that connect the plant to the electricity grid. 3 of them were already knocked out in this war, and today a fire apparently affected the last remaining line. Zelensky saying that backup diesel generators were used, and there's also a thermal nuclear plant near the nuclear plant that can provide electricity, which is so important to making sure that they can power the cooling systems there that keep the nuclear reactors there from melting down. Out of the 6 nuclear reactors at this plant, the largest in Europe, 4 of them were already shut down. Today, the last remaining 2 were taken offline, given the major concerns here, as the UN's Nuclear Energy Agency says they have to get inspectors there immediately to bring the situation under control. But the hang-up seems to be that Ukrainians want the nuclear inspectors to come through Ukrainian territory, while the Russians are insisting they come through Russian territory. We're also getting an update today on that attack that hit a train station in central Ukraine in the Dnipro region. Ukraine's now saying 25 people were killed, including 2 children. And Russia's defense officials are saying that they take responsibility for that attack and that it killed 200 Ukrainian troops who were being transferred to the front lines. Now, Ukraine's military has not commented on that claim, and we have not been able to independently confirm it. But it comes as the Ukrainians are receiving more military support from the United States, some $3 billion announced yesterday. That was the topic today of a conversation between President Biden and President Zelensky. The Ukrainian president has said that the United States has been the most significant supporter of Ukraine so far in this war. He is thanking the U.S. for its support and hoping that more and more weapons will be coming from Washington and from other countries around the world. Joshua?
Thank you, Josh. That's NBC's Josh Letterman reporting from Ukraine. We will get to some of today's other top stories in a moment, including the school principals helping each other heal after shootings on campus, more flash flooding across America with rescues in Mississippi, and a tentative agreement for the teachers of Columbus, Ohio, to get back in class. Tonight's headlines begin in Uvalde, Texas, with the firing of its school police chief. We broke the news during last night's show as Uvalde's school board voted unanimously to fire Chief Pete Arredondo. The school shooting in May made him a unique target of criticism. It took an hour and 14 minutes before officers killed the gunman inside Robb Elementary School. By that time, 19 children and 2 teachers were dead. Uvalde is hardly the only city coping with the aftermath of a school shooting. Today in Detroit, a weapons detection system was online at Oxford High School. A shooting there last November left 4 students dead and several injured. The shooter is pleading not guilty to first-degree murder. His parents are charged with involuntary manslaughter. Prosecutors argue their negligence allowed the shooting to happen. Meanwhile, a group is creating a path forward for a unique set of school shooting survivors. Principals. A number of survivors joined together and formed the Principal Recovery Network, and they're sharing guidance on how schools can handle the aftermath. NBC's Stephen Romo has their story.
George Roberts was the principal of Perry Hall High School near Baltimore when a student opened fire just hours into the first day of school. Now, 10 years later, Roberts is part of the Principal Recovery Network, a nonpartisan group of current and former principals who've experienced gun violence at their campuses. Back then, he and so many principals since did not have any roadmap to follow during one of the most traumatic days of their lives. That's why the network released their Guide to Recovery.
Really is written by principals for principals, that if something were to happen, it could be something they could push to a principal who needs it right away.
The principals rolled it out this week at the Columbine Memorial in Colorado, 23 years after that high school shooting. Among the guide's topics, what to think about before reopening, how to address student and staff mental health, how to include student input in recovery plans, and how to approach offers of help from outside groups.
This particular document is directly from the viewpoint of being a school leader in the moment of and the days, months, years, and decades thereafter. The usefulness of it is it's quick, it's easy, and it's extremely pragmatic.
Elizabeth Brown became the principal of Forest High School in Ocala, Florida in 2018, just 45 days after a student who'd been expelled shot a classmate with a sawed-off shotgun.
What is not understood by society is the ramifications on the mental health of students, staff, and school community, that this has forever changed their lives.
The network says there are tips that can help, especially right after a shooting, like more faculty meetings, mental health support like trauma counselors and therapy dogs, and hard choices like when to reopen schools, especially if funerals and building repairs are factored in.
It is horrific that we have to have a guide like this. And there will be another school shooting. There will be another active shooter scenario in our country.
A new report from nonprofit Everytown for Gun Safety found the number of gunfire incidents on school grounds quadrupled to 193 last school year, up from an average of 49 per year since 2013. And while the guide might seem alarming heading into this school year, the principals say they're just trying to be practical.
The timing was very deliberate, and our hope was that by releasing this tool at this point in time, some of these pieces of advice would be useful to school leaders that are coming back and revisiting their school safety plans and preparing their school communities to have a safe and solid learning atmosphere this year.
That was NBC's Stephen Romo reporting. We've got some breaking news tonight about something that President Biden just said. He's speaking about gun control tonight, among other things, at a midterm election rally in Rockville, Maryland, that's just outside of Washington, D.C. He just said, and we'll play it for you in a second, that if Democrats can maintain control of Congress after the midterms, that the items on the agenda could involve banning assault weapons. Here's what the president said moments ago.
If we elect 2 more senators, we keep the House and Democrats, we're going to get a lot of unfinished business we're going to get done. Folks, look. We'll codify Roe v. Wade. We'll ban assault weapons. We'll protect Social Security and Medicare. We'll pass universal pre-K. We'll restore the child care tax credit. We'll protect voting rights. We'll pass election reform and make sure no one ever has the opportunity to steal an election again.
So there you hear the president running through a litany of Democratic policy proposals, including banning assault weapons. Now, you may remember that the gun control, the gun violence measure that passed Congress did not include that, much to the dismay of some congressional Democrats. It just would not survive that compromise. But apparently, President Biden has not taken it off the table alongside a number of other very common Democratic policy items. And you might also note the president said 2 more senators. That would signal that he might want the Senate to break the filibuster to make this happen, meaning the Democrats could do it with 50 votes instead of that 60-vote filibuster majority. So there are a couple of different layers of policy that I'm absolutely certain are going to come up in tomorrow's press briefing at the White House. But there you heard it, President Biden saying tonight at a rally in Rockville, Maryland, that if Democrats can take stronger control of the Senate, that he, at least for political reasons, would say as an enticement to midterm voters, that banning assault weapons has not left his agenda. We'll keep monitoring his speech, see if he says anything further, and we will definitely have coverage tomorrow of reaction to the president's comments on that. Severe weather continues across the country with more major damage and urgent rescues. Dallas is no longer under flood warnings, but more than 15 inches of rain fell in some areas on Monday. One resident said she had almost no warning as the water rose quickly around her.
Water was past this trampoline?
Yes, it was past the trampoline, yeah.
How long did it take for the water to rise?
Minutes. It was minutes.
Officials call this a once-in-a-thousand-year storm, and the flooding killed at least 1 person. In Southern California, a flash flood washed out part of a main highway, Interstate 10, that runs from L.A. to Phoenix and beyond. The desert region has endured a series of monsoons this month. And emergency rescue crews are at work in Mississippi. Parts of the state have seen up to a foot of heavy rain with some flash flooding. NBC's Carrie Sanders has the latest on the storms in the Gulf.
Tonight, 5 million people under flood watch as torrential rains move across the Gulf. This as flash floods pounded parts of Mississippi yesterday, derailing trains, washing out roads, and forcing nursing home residents to flee to higher ground.
If we instruct you that you are in a risk area or a high-risk area, please heed that advice.
While water has receded outside Jackson today, the mayor warning of more floods to come.
I think it is important that our residents prepare in advance.
A big concern, the Pearl River running through the city. It's already nearly 3 feet above flood stage and could soon impact homes and businesses. That's only 6 feet less than the floods that ripped through the same area in 2020, damaging more than 500 homes. Just this week in Florence, more than 100 children and employees had to be rescued from a daycare. In nearby Canton, the concern is Bear Creek. 80-year-old William James and his 76-year-old wife, Arlena, are housebound.
Will you have to evacuate? Where will you go?
Oh, what I got, wherever.
This is far from over. The Pearl River is expected to crest 8 feet above flood stage on Tuesday. Meantime, the weather system is moving east, dropping 2 to 3 inches an hour. Next in its path, the Florida Panhandle.
That's NBC's Carrie Sanders reporting. In Ohio, a teacher strike in the state's largest school district is over, with a plan to get classrooms back to normal. Columbus City Schools now have a tentative labor deal with the union, the Columbus Education Association. Students returned to class yesterday remotely. This plan would have them back on campus with teachers this Monday. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has more from Columbus.
Overnight, the Columbus Board of Education and the school district's teachers union both announcing that the two sides have come to terms on a conceptual agreement to have kids and teachers back in the classroom, ending the strike. That plan is to get kids and teachers back in the classroom on Monday. We do not have specifics on this agreement at this point. The teachers union says it's more than 4,000 members need to vote to ratify this agreement. We know that the union had been pushing for multiple things, including smaller class sizes, full-time PE, art, and music teachers in every elementary school, and improvements to heating and air conditioning in the schools here in Columbus, Ohio. The school district says its 47,000 students will finish out this week with virtual learning after the start of the school year was in this remote setting because of the teachers being on strike. The students learning with the help of substitute teachers as well as others supporting that learning. The plan is to have teachers and students in the classroom on Monday, bringing an end to the strike. But again, at this point, it is a conceptual agreement, and we do not have the specifics or ratification from the teachers union, but it's certainly a step in the right direction and a sign of hope for this community. Back to you.
That's NBC's Jesse Kirsch reporting from Columbus, Ohio. The most powerful rocket ever built will take off toward the moon a few days from now. It's the first step of NASA's Artemis program, returning humans to the moon en route to Mars. This flight will see how the new rocket does in flight without people aboard. Lester Holt got an up-close look at the preparations in an NBC News exclusive.
Sitting on Launch Pad 39B, the Artemis rocket, NASA's most powerful yet, taller than the Statue of Liberty. 55 engines and motors will lift the nearly 600 million-pound rocket skyward on a historic mission, a first step to eventually return Americans to the lunar surface.
So how real is this, going back to the moon?
Oh, it's very real. We're definitely going. We're going to actually live there. We will have landers go to the moon, we'll have rovers on the moon, and eventually we'll have a base camp on the moon.
Once beyond the pole of Earth's gravity, the Orion capsule perched atop of the rocket will orbit the moon for 42 days, uncrewed, but with male and female astronaut dummies loaded with sensors to study the potential effects of the mission on future real astronauts. Jessica Meir is one of 18 veteran astronauts, part of the Artemis team, who could fly on the first mission to the moon since 1972. The goal, learn more about the moon and use it as a jumping-off point to Mars. Recently, I met her at Johnson Space Center in Houston to experience some of the training.
It's a big, big rocket you've grown up on.
Absolutely, even bigger than the Saturn V for the Apollo missions. You've got to get out there to Kennedy Space Center and look up and see it there, and it really gives you some perspective.
Inside the Orion training simulator, we got strapped into our seats, screens and switches over our heads.
Here you can see the different batteries. Over here right now, this is looking at the propulsion system.
How exciting is it, the prospect of going to the moon, for you personally?
It's incredibly exciting. We haven't been there since the 70s, and it's really time to go back. You know, to me, it's about exploration. It's just an inherent part of all of us as humans. We had this profound impact on society when we went to the moon the first time, with all of this stimulation of resources in all the STEM fields. So we can expect that all when we go back to the moon again.
And once back on the moon, astronauts will explore the surface. Here on Earth, engineers showed me using virtual reality how astronauts will train to walk on the moon, using available data to simulate the lighting conditions and even what it would be like to climb a ladder to the lander. It even allows me to get a glimpse of home.
I want to see the Earth there.
To explore the moon further, NASA is working on a new lunar rover that will allow astronauts to drive on the surface. surface. Using data gathered from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, they're able to replicate the deep shadows and craters astronauts will encounter.
How do we explore?
You'll pitch the hand controller forward, and then you can twist it to turn left and right.
But using this, you would be able to simulate routes of places you want to go.
Unlike on Earth, where your route planner in your car takes into account just where the roads are, you need to be able to accommodate what the terrain looks like, what the lighting is, where you're going, and all along the route.
NASA has come a long way from one small step, the return to the moon, and eventually a mission to Mars, a leap that was once beyond our imagination.
That's NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt reporting. That is so cool. Would you go? I would go. Let me know if you would go. You can't go on this one, though. Artemis 1 is scheduled for liftoff this Monday. Would totally go. Up next here on Earth, the next phase of California emissions. The state is preparing to phase out new gas-powered vehicles. What it means for California and perhaps for you, just ahead. Stay close. California is taking another big step towards fighting climate change, one that might even affect Americans who don't live there. Today, state regulators voted to ban the sale of new gasoline-only vehicles by the year 2035. New vehicles. Yesterday, California Governor Gavin Newsom called it a historic move.
We will be the first jurisdiction in the world to require all new cars to be sold to be alternative fuel cars. And here's why it's significant. The car manufacturers themselves are celebrating and embracing it, including Toyota today, not just Ford and GM. We are going through one of the great transformations in our history, energy transformations. And the electrification is the architecture for economic transformation.
California is the nation's largest auto market. 16 states and the District of Columbia follow its lead on emission standards. But how do you ban gas guzzlers? And if the ban works, how much of a difference will it make on climate change? Let's discuss it with Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali. He's the Executive Vice President at the National Wildlife Federation and founder of Revitalization Strategies. Dr. Ali, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
What do you make of this plan from California's Air Resource Board? How big of a difference will it or won't it make?
It's going to be very significant. It's really a transformational set of actions that California is doing. And as you shared, the majority of the rest of the country will also follow. You know, it gives us an opportunity to do a number of things. One, it's going to be good for the economy. Two, it's going to be good for the environment. And three, it's going to be good for public health. We know that there are about 30 million cars that are registered in California, both cars and trucks. About 1.5 million new cars come onto the market every year, and right now about 8% of those are electric vehicles. But we also know that we've got 200 to 300,000 people who currently are dealing with air pollution that is making them to actually lose their lives. And in California, there's a significant part of the population also that's dealing with that. So by moving forward in this way, they are doing the actions that are necessary to help us to address the climate crisis. And it also helps us to address some of the environmental injustices that have been happening in our most vulnerable communities.
Why do this as a ban? Why not some other form of incentive? I mean, it seems like the electric car market, you know, once Ford made the electric F-150, I think the debate was kind of over at that point, that you could take the most popular vehicle in America, electrify it, and have a waiting list of people who want to buy the new version. Does it need to be a ban, or is this the kind of thing that the market and consumers might have embraced on their own?
Well, I think sometimes we need a nudge. We especially need a nudge when we're dealing with the significance of the climate crisis. And the beauty of what folks have put forward there in California is that it's a phased approach. So by 2026, you know, 35% of the new cars that are there, the SUVs, the small trucks, are going to be moving to zero emissions. That's incredibly important. And then the phasing continues. In 2028, 51%, 2030, 68%. And then by 2035, we move to 100%. And some of those will also be plug-ins and hybrids and others. So it doesn't stop folks. It doesn't mean that folks have to get rid of the vehicles that they currently have. But when these new cars are coming onto the market, then we're going to move in a direction that's going to be helpful both to the environment and public health.
Having lived in California, I know how much people take environmental protection very, very seriously. People also take cars very seriously, and people take their individualism hyper seriously. And it feels like the intersection of those three things is the cultural piece of this that could get really complicated really fast. I mean, a lot of California's car culture is built not just around, Teslas and so forth, but around these big gas-guzzling classic cars or, speeding cars that go up and down the 101 that are kind of ingrained in the culture that I don't think people are going to want to give up, especially since this only applies to new gas-powered vehicles. How do you deal with the old ones and get people to want to make the switch?
Well, again, folks can continue to have those older cars, their classic cars. I understand, the value that's there for folks who enjoy those types of things. But also, as these new ones come onto the market, people will naturally gravitate toward them, especially when they find out that they're going to be able to save money, that they're also going to be able to help others, both the folks who are inside and next to their communities and, of course, across the planet. I'm an optimist, and I believe in the humanity of folks, and I think many people will begin to embrace this. And it will happen over time, but we've got to make the moves now to begin the journey that we have to make sure that we're lowering the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions that are going into our atmosphere. The other thing, Joshua, that I'll just share real quickly is that I think a lot of folks in California have also seen the wildfires. They've seen the droughts. They've seen the floods that are going on, and they understand that there is a connection between the transportation systems that we're using. We know that that's one of the main drivers of the climate emergency that we're dealing with. So I think over time, we will get a vast majority of folks who will move in the right direction.
I was just going to ask you about that in terms of how all this locks together and seeing droughts and wildfires and floods and everything else, and the inevitable day when one of those fault lines slips. We're still waiting on the Hollywood, the Hayward, and the San Andreas faults, and that throws everything into chaos. This is something that seems like can be addressed now. Before I let you go, what about affordability? Where do you think that we stand in terms of just consumers being able to look at non-gas powered vehicles, hybrids or all-electric vehicles, or even hydrogen-powered vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles as a good buy, just dollars and cents-wise, before we go?
Oh, sure. Well, there's a range right now for electric vehicles, especially with the introduction of the Inflation Reduction Act, which, you got $7,000 credit, $7,500 credit actually for new cars and $4,000 for used ones. So that brings that price down. So you have some that start now around $25,000, $26,000 and, of course, go up. So it helps to meet whatever a family's price point might be, and new models will be coming on. So folks will have choice. And of course, the new truck market that's also coming that so many people are, anticipating and ready for. So, there's something will be there for everyone. But we also, Joshua, we have to also say that there are other types of things that we also have to be focused on, buses and bikes and scooters and trains, that we still have to build out that infrastructure.
Yeah, and there are efforts, to the credit of a lot of the mass transit agencies in California. They have been trying to do things like electrifying rail lines and expanding mass transit lines to try to meet that need. Yes, you can take the train in Los Angeles, and it often works pretty darn well. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali of the National Wildlife Federation and Revitalization Strategies, appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do you need to get a major record deal? Turns out you don't need to be human, not anymore. But an AI rapper was just signed and dropped within a week. We'll tell you why before we go. Capitol Records could be the first major music label to sign a virtual rapper. His name, FN Meka. Capitol signed him last week. But the deal didn't last long. Yesterday, Capitol Music Group announced it's cutting ties. Activists accused the computer-generated artist of perpetuating black stereotypes, including its use of the N-word. Today, in a statement, Capitol apologized. Quote, "We offer our deepest apologies to the black community. our insensitivity in signing this project without asking enough questions about equity and the creative process behind it, unquote. Joining us now is Segun Oduolowu. He is an entertainment journalist. Mr. Oduolowu, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Joshua, it's good to be here. And first, let me just say the fact that two guys that look like us are discussing this topic is wonderful, because what we know is that two guys that look like us weren't in the room when Capitol Records signed this abomination, and the company that created it thought that this would be a good idea.
Well, what was the thought process behind this? I mean, I guess I can understand how on paper the idea of having a rapper that had AI-generated lyrics could kind of make sense, especially since, depending on where you look in online spaces, Fortnite, for example, there's an increasing presence of AI and music and culture. So on paper, I can kind of understand how it might look like a good idea.
Well, paper is the key word. In the industry, in entertainment, the key to everything is money. That's the answer to all your questions. And a lot of artists have really been speaking out on this. And I want to champion Joe Budden, former artist turned podcaster, who's been speaking about the death of creativity. There's a big difference between a Basquiat on your wall and a bunch of dogs playing poker. And what that is the difference between creativity and manufacturing. And when you can tweak algorithms to basically create what's going to sell, you're just painting by numbers and feeding Spotify playlists and Fortnite playlists. And instead of artists and musicians actually creating art, everything now is just consumed. It's just easily manufactured and easily consumed. There is no artistic quality in creating an AI rapper. You're only doing that to tweak the algorithms to see what's going to sell, what's going to be popular, and in no way, shape, or form are real artists, real musicians being compensated. And if I were on Capitol Records, I would be outraged as an artist that, one, I wasn't consulted. Two, is this my replacement? Like, is this the nail in the coffin of the music industry where we don't need the artists anymore? Because that's what Capitol Records is saying. The playlists govern what people hear and what people buy. That's what generates the money. So why do I want to work with an artist that could be difficult when I can create something with CGI, AI, or even just a bunch of, ones and zeros and, binary code, create music and just push it to the masses, and that's all I care about. Now I don't have to deal with your writer or, what an artist may be going through. And I find it offensive.
Right.
And what does FN Mecca stand for? Does it stand for F Negroes? And I'm only saying that to be polite because that's not the word think they were going for.
I certainly hope it was not the word that they were going for, but I hear what you're saying in terms of what it could mean for the future of artists in the industry. Granted, I presume there's still always going to be a need for live performances and concert sales and so on, especially as artists try to kind of make revenue through a bunch of different revenue streams with, record sales not being the same as they were. I know I've only got you for a few minutes, so I wanted to ask you more specifically in terms of the role of tech in music. This connection feels like kind of a done deal. I mean, if you play enough Fortnite, if you spend enough time in metaverse and digital spaces, there's all kinds of changes in music. Epic Games, which makes Fortnite, just bought Bandcamp, which is a platform for independent music. Is FN Mecca a sign of something larger, or does this feel more like an isolated matter to you? I know I've only got about a minute, but I wonder how you see this in a larger context before we go.
Joshua, it's proof positive that the end of times is here. Think of the metaverse. Now you can have an avatar perform concerts in there. You can generate income within these virtual spaces where you don't need the artist to tour. You can put on your Oculus and go to a concert with a virtual artist, and you never have to leave your room, and they can charge you for the tickets. So the human equation is taken out of this. And when you start seeing video game companies buying music outlets, when you see the Spotifys, the Apple Musics, what gets pushed to their playlist, what shows up at the forefront of, what you might buy or what you might purchase, then you realize that the artist has been completely removed, and it's just a bunch of people counting pennies, dollars, and what's going to make the most sense. And it's a shame for the music industry because it used to be about the art, and it no longer is. It's basically consumer products. I mean, when was the last time you stood outside for an album?
I mean, it's been a minute, but I still do listen to albums. I do listen to them indeed, but I'm a certain age. My knees ain't what they were. So standing for an album, it ain't the same. Entertainment journalist Shagun Oduolowu, I appreciate you coming on to talk this through with us. Thank you very much.
Joshua, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Remember to send me your thoughts and questions on this or anything we discussed tonight. What do you make of FN Mecca? Would you go up on Artemis 1? Or if you have questions or thoughts about California's new plan on zero-emission vehicles, we're at NBC Now Tonight on social media. Leave us a brief but brilliant voicemail, 888-575-2NBC, or email us nowtonight@nbcnews.com. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. Thanks for making time for us. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.